Welcome to Character in Action with Matthew J. Norcross, the official podcast of the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. Come journey with us on the real-life stories of character in action. And now here's your host, Matthew J. Norcross.
Welcome to Character in Action from the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. I'm Matthew J. Norcross here in the studio with Robbie Dillmore. Hey, Robbie.
Great to be here again, Matt.
All right. Now, we're continuing interviews with local North Carolina political candidates. And this week, we're talking with longtime High Point City Council member Brit Moore. He's held the position for more than 10 non-consecutive years, I might add, and is also a managing partner at Omega Concepts Incorporated. Brit Moore joins us now over the phone. Brit, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right. So you're here because you are a living example of character in action. Now, before we get started, can you please tell our listeners more about yourself?
Sure. I was born and raised here in High Point and immersed myself into the community all these years. Went away to college and at UNC Charlotte. Spent a few years down there afterwards working in the banking industry, and then came back home and started working in the family business for a while. We were in the apparel manufacturing business, and as many of us and our peers saw that shifting globally, we struck out, my brother and I, and formed Omega Concepts, and been doing that ever since. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Karen. I've known her since about the 7th grade. But we have 2 wonderful children, and really loving High Point. It's been a wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family.
Very nice. All right. For those who have never heard of Omega Concepts, tell us what it is.
Omega Concepts is just a small development, small-scale development, some for investment-type purposes, some for sale and remodel and resale. So it's in the real estate and property management arena.
Sounds very nice. Don't you think, Robbie?
Oh, yeah. It's certainly a great investment for many folks.
Yeah. So how do you define character?
Well, I think character, the best I've heard it described, is the things you say and do when other people aren't watching.
Nice. I hear that all the time. It's a very common answer, isn't it, Robbie?
Oh, absolutely. And wouldn't it be nice to know that the people that you vote for in office, have that idea of character?
Right. Exactly. So, Britt, please tell us a story of witnessing either in person or in history. Someone that was a true phoenix, someone that was a role model, leading by example and making the world a better place.
Oh, wow. Well, the world's full of them, and America's certainly full of them. I don't consider myself a history expert, but I do love our history. And, from the founding fathers and those that signed the documents shortly after, leaving the authority of a king, knowing what they knew implicitly. I'm just amazed and admire the vision and the forethought they had, and yet here we stand, all these years later, hundreds of years, and we're still the beacon on the hill. We still are just, it's amazing we've thrived as long as we have, because nobody else has been able to do it.
Yeah, no one's been able to do it. There's nothing like the history of the United States. The fact that we rebelled against a tyrannical king, King George, right, Robbie?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing how many, when you do a little ancestry, how many of us are related to those people that were that brave.
Yes.
Right?
So
it's true.
Yeah, it is. So please share a moment that stands out in your mind, something big or even the slightest gesture that was a true transformative Phoenix moment, pardon me, one where you knew you had a significant impact on an individual's life or on a group of people?
Well, I had the privilege in college of was walking down the hall one day and I saw a flyer on the wall it said ISE. It stood for International Student Exchange. So in 1980, summer of 83, 84, I spent 3 months on a tour with 51 other folks from all across the United States. I was the only one. No, it wasn't. It was 36. I apologize. 36 folks from all across the United States. And I was the only one from North Carolina. We all boarded a plane in JFK and flew over to London and started on a summer educational tour. And part of that tour had us spend about 4 days in Moscow and 3 days in Leningrad. And the power of that moment is, for your listeners that may be a little younger than I'm 60 now. That was back before the wall fell.
Berlin Wall.
Yes. So I got to go behind the Berlin Wall for a week as a young 19-year-old and experience what it was like. In some ways, I wish I had been older because, when you're 19, you're still very young. But the impact of that and meeting the people that lived in those type of regimes, it was powerful and it impacted my thought process. It improved my gratefulness for being in America. It was maybe the most impactful time of my life outside of getting married and having children.
Yeah, there have been a lot of impactful moments in all of our lives, but the Berlin Wall, that was definitely an impactful moment, that's for sure. Don't you think, Robbie?
Oh, I like him, had an opportunity to go over there. I guess I was older, before the Iron Curtain, to actually go into Russia, and went into that same area. And I was shocked because, we were brought up to believe those people were pretty much the enemy and hateful and all this.
Right.
But what I found actually was very friendly, warm people that were so excited to meet an American and really, really nice to me. And I remember thinking, man, these people, this isn't anything like I pictured the Russian people to be, especially at that time in history. Did you experience the same thing, Brit?
Absolutely. From the time we got there, I remember at the Moscow airport, we flew over on Aeroflot, which was quite interesting. It was very no frills compared to TWA at the time. But the government buildings were immaculate, and you could tell they were. They had gold faucets. They had armed guards everywhere. But once we got to where we were staying and had a chance to mingle with some of the others and their families, we were given kind of free rein, not to roam free rein, but to meet and engage with the folks. And I remember I had on a pair of Levi's jeans at the time. At that time, they were made in North Carolina and California, but they every one of them wanted to buy my jeans off of them. they wanted a pair of Levi's jeans terribly. So it was a wonderful experience, and I agree with Robbie that the people were warm, friendly, hospitable. It did change my perception as well.
Yeah, quite an amazing story. So let's talk about the trait of respect. Now, this is a crucial trait in business and in life. And my question about the trait of respect is, how do you think we can rekindle the trait of respect today?
Ooh, I think that starts early. I think we've got a lot of social fabric changes that have happened in the last generation or so,
Mm-hmm.
as we've improved so much of our lives with the air conditioning and the cars and the technology. I think we're seeing a breakdown of the family if you look at the numbers, and I think the home is where all of that starts. Then it obviously comes up through your education. So I think we gotta take that and go all the way back down through the ladder through our schools. I think one way that could help it is if we had more consequences for our actions early on.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It's yeah, with all this technology that we have in our hands, the trait of respect is a lot more important these days, especially with all the family issues going on.
Oh yeah. Well, it's so very easy to hide behind these phones for all the great and computers for all the great things we've been able to do with them, and the things that they've helped us with, health care and medicines and whatnot. It's kind of the double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And to a great extent, I think fatherhood, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? And
Right.
and that has everything to do with respect and fathers staying home and being fathers.
Amen.
Like you said, it starts early. Like if they don't respect their fathers, the chances of them respecting much else is not going to happen.
Absolutely. I'll share with you something that happened just last night. About a year ago, there's a group of black men. Actually went to school with one of them in high school. Great guy, still a good friend, but Donald Campbell and Greg Commander, two guys here in town that have their own amazing stories of turning their lives around. And they have created a group that meets every other Wednesday, and there were probably close to 75 or 80 there last night. And it's predominantly aimed to the black community, but it's open to everyone. And I've become a part of that when I can get there. And they are speaking to the exact subject that we are talking about right now, last night. And so, love to see that groundswell. Plants grow from the seed up. So, when we talk about the home and getting out there early and being that father and showing them an example of what it is to be a man and to make mistakes and be fallible and be accountable. So there's a lot I just wanted to share. That's a pretty good story happening right here in High Point. It's called the Men's Huddle.
Wow. That's
Wow. So let's move on to the trait of responsibility. Now, you've served in the city council for a long time, and like I said before, you're in the real estate business. How do you manage both of these responsibilities?
Well, it can be taxing, but it's by prioritizing and trying to stay organized, because you have a lot of balls in the air if you enter the public service arena and your goal is to try to do it as best you can and as well as you can. It can take a lot of time. So it's strictly time management and the fortunate circumstance of having an understanding wife and family.
Yeah, time management is especially key in today's world, and I gotta admit, I need to work on my time management as well.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
they never ends, young man.
Yeah. Now, another trait I want to talk about today is fairness. Now, how would you define fairness, and how would you want people to demonstrate this trait in both their personal and professional lives?
Fairness can be simply complicated because depending on the situation, fairness is in the eye of the beholder. From a policy standpoint, I think it's understanding that laws are made and they can be changed and amended, but they apply to everyone and they should apply to everyone on the same level. Fairness gets a little murky when you try to specifically tie it to one situation at one time, and change the rules as you go.
Yeah. Quite an interesting analogy on the trait of fairness, don't you think?
Yeah, well, when it comes to, policy and those kind of things, somebody in his capacity would understand it at a level, that I clearly don't, and that's great counsel.
Yeah. So let's move on to the trait of trustworthiness. Now, my question to you about this trait is, it's become another lost art, especially in our government and our institutions. How do you define and live out trustworthiness? And more importantly, how do you instill it in others?
Well, I think trust is a lot like respect. It's earned, and then by your actions, by being a man or woman of your word, and then back on your word, or not explaining why you may have changed a reaction to someone, or what their expectations of a trust, this vote this way, this vote that way. And my response is that, especially on the local level, pick up the phone and give me a call before you judge what I did, because we can have a discussion as to, and then we can learn from each other. Not that I'm always going to be right, but if we don't have the discussion, then I can't learn from you either. So I think, trust is exercised daily, and is something that you can spend a lifetime trying to build up, and you can lose it in a day.
I think we lost you a little bit.
No, we can wait. There was enough there. I can put that together, Matt. It's okay.
Got it.
But I would just, that's an interesting take on it, Matt, that I don't think we've ever had a guest talk about.
Yeah.
That by being vulnerable, right? Like, somebody has an issue with those things, to actually invite them into a conversation and say, let's talk about it.
Exactly.
And maybe I'm wrong. That I love that aspect of vulnerability as part of being trustworthy, because if you don't perceive that person's vulnerable, and they've got this hard attitude, why would you even begin to trust them? Because something seems like they're hiding something.
Yeah. So let's move on to the trait of caring. Now, my question to you is, how do you demonstrate the trait of caring as a member of the High Point City Council?
Oh, I think probably the number one way would be to listen genuinely, and to hear, and then try to act in a way that would help them either resolve a problem, or understand an issue, or understand, why you can do certain things in government and you can't do other things in government, and it should be that way. So I think number one would be if you listen, and you listen well.
Listening and listen well. That's why I've always been told as a kid, and people still need to learn that today.
Yeah, I'd say it's a number one way you can tell somebody doesn't care.
That's true.
If they don't listen to you, you're like, well, I don't think they care.
Mm-hmm. So now, two more traits I'd like to talk about today. One is citizenship. And my question to you about this trait is, what do you think it means as a politician and a candidate to be a good citizen?
Wow. I think being active from the political standpoint, I think it's being active in your community, not in not just the community that you're comfortable in, but we're living in a world now where our community is much more diverse and different than when I first took office in 2010, and it's drastically different than when I was in high school. So to carry the same pride as you do being an American, I'm very proud to be from High Point. I think it is no, I don't think it is. I know it is an exceptional town with a very rich history, culturally, agriculturally, manufacturing, and we're evolving into so many other arenas, from pharmaceuticals to technology, and we're merging in with our sister cities, Greensboro, Kernersville, Winston, as we grow. So I just think it's kind of you carry the banner of your town as a politician.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the final trait I want to talk about today is empathy. Now, how do you believe people across the state and this country should demonstrate empathy? And in your case, how do you demonstrate it in your position in High Point City Council?
Well, I think the big difference for me, or I try to be and make sure that when I'm listening and then going to try to be empathetic, I need to make sure that I'm not coming over as sympathetic, because
right.
I may not have ever experienced whether they're sharing a high or a low with me, or a challenge or a victory. I may not have ever personally been in that situation, but I've been around enough to know a lot of things and know I got a lot more to learn. So I think just making sure that I present that I know the difference, and caring for their issue, and not acting like that I've walked every bridge and crossed every river.
So when you define the difference between sympathy and empathy, how would you actually define that?
Well, I can sympathize with somebody if I have, I just use athletics. I've played football, basketball, and baseball. I've run marathons. I've ridden mountain climbs. So I can speak to those subject matters with a little bit of experience. But, if you're asking me about things I haven't participated in, then I have to take a little bit different attitude, because I haven't been in that arena.
Right. So, that reminds me of something. I remember interviewing Father Joseph Fezio, who is the founder of a Catholic publisher called Ignatius Press, and he talked exactly about the difference between sympathy and empathy, and what you said about it kind of reminds me of that.
I'm not familiar with him, but I had two really good parents.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, before we close, please share with us some thoughts on how we can bring character back into our culture.
I think we touched on several of those things, and I feel like it's coming back. But it takes a little bit of time, because it took time for it to get where I think we were mutually agreeing things aren't what they are or were. But I guess every generation as they age can say that. But I think promoting traditional values of the home, of the church, of faith. I mean, some people don't have the same faith I have, but if they've got faith in something that's peaceful and for the better good of all men, then we should let them live that life. But we have to do that, and we have to hold people accountable with consequences for negative activity.
Those are great words. All right, Brit Moore, member of High Point City Council. Thank you for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great words. Great words to think about, Matt. I'll be thinking about them for days.
I will too. Thank you for your help, Robbie.
My pleasure.
Character in Action is a co-production of Firebird Media and the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. Your host is me, Matthew J. Norcross. Our producer is Robbie Dillmore, who also does the intro. Special thanks to the Truth Network. If you like the show, please listen to and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes are posted every Sunday. Thank you for listening. And always remember, everyone can be a phoenix.